Hi. Today I am back. I am back and I wanted to share what I have been up to since the last time that I posted a video. I started becoming very overwhelmed because I had to move again. I have moved 7 times in the past 5 years. And I know there are more moves than years. So yeah, somewhere in between. I moved in with a family member, and another time I got evicted. But that's a story for another day. So yeah, I became super overwhelmed because I had to move again, and I was really dreading it, and I got so discouraged from continuing to work, put myself out there, put messages out there. For some reason, putting messages out there has been my calling for a long time, but it has also been the source of stress because for the longest time I have been worried about how to make sense, how to give out messages that make sense, that don't confuse people, that don't send people down the wrong path. Because I understand that there's a big responsibility for those of us who share information, right? We need to consider the audience. And to me, putting out spiritual knowledge without it being applied correctly, it could be more detrimental. And so for the longest time, I've been worried about how to make it digestible and make sense for everybody. And I haven't been very successful because I continuously also get distracted with other things that are happening in my life. Like this time that I had to move. I had to move to a different country. So it wasn't just a simple move. I also had to move to a different country, so it made it a lot more overwhelming. And then when I finally made that move and I got settled here, then I had to worry about my son starting school. He hasn't been in school ever. He was gonna start kindergarten and he didn't know how to do anything. I have never pushed him academically, and he was really behind. Like, I noticed the first day that some kids knew how to write their name and he didn't even know how to hold a pencil. I'm not saying that was good, that I did right, but it is what I did. I didn't feel like pushing him that way, so I didn't. And then I got overwhelmed seeing all that was gonna happen for him and all the challenges that he was going to experience, and I got overwhelmed with that as well. And then on the first day of school, I took a picture of him and I sent it to my family members. And there was one family member that didn't answer me, didn't say anything. And I thought that was weird because he usually answers. He usually says something. So I thought it was weird, but didn't make much of it. Until the next day, when I received a phone call from a cousin that usually never calls me. So when she called me, I knew it was serious. Like, I had to pick up the phone, and it made me feel a little antsy, nervous, because I knew something was up. So when I answered the phone, she's hysterically crying, and for a few minutes I couldn't understand what she was saying. I was pretty certain that something had happened, maybe to one of her kids, because of how emotional she was. Then I hear her say, in between all of the crying, I understood the words, "so decomposed and full of lies." When I heard that, I knew instantly she was talking about my dad. It was so surreal. It was so surreal, but I knew it was him because he's the one that didn't say anything. When I sent that message about my son starting school,
I didn't hear from him. I should have known something was up. And I didn't do much to investigate. I knew my dad was a bit sick, but I just never expected for him to just die without telling us that he wasn't feeling well. And there's the part of him dying alone and nobody knowing about it. It was a very, very hot week. He died on July 23rd. We concluded because of the last time that we noticed he was streaming news on YouTube, and the last time we noticed that he sent a message to someone else, and when he stopped looking at messages, we concluded that he passed away on July 23rd. But we found him until July 26th. And it was a very hot week, like I said, and that's why his body was very badly decomposed. And when my cousin said those words, I just knew she was talking about him. And I went into sort of a catatonic mode. I didn't know what to do, what to say. I didn't know if I wanted to see him. I didn't know anything. I couldn't cry. All I did was call my brother and sister to tell them, and that's all I could do. Then my cousin called me back and said, we need you to come. We need you to do something. Like, they're gonna take his body and we don't know if he has any funeral arrangements. My dad was living with my aunt, but my aunt didn't know what to do, so she wanted us to be a part of it, the process. And so that's when I kind of snapped out of it, and I decided to go with my brother together to try to prevent from people taking him to a place that then was going to be a whole long process to recover him from. And it turns out that because he was so badly decomposed, he was not identifiable, and they had to take him to that place. We tried to prevent him going. In the end, we had to go through like a very extensive process to try to get him out of that place, and we had to recognize his body a couple more times in the process. I had to see him in a very poor state. The first time, when I got to my aunt's house, I was not sure that I wanted to see him because I wasn't sure that I could live with that image. But it is true that your imagination can be that much worse. Because when I heard those words from my cousin saying decomposing full of flies, I had a much horrific picture in my mind. I was scared to see him, but I still decided to see him because I just knew that I could be okay. I trusted in my ability to be okay with what is, to accept. I also didn't want to have weird pictures in my mind. I wanted to just accept what actually happened and what actually was the truth. So I saw him, and I can tell you that seeing him didn't feel worse than hearing the words on the phone. Decomposing full of flies. That is still what gets to me today. Not seeing him very much. It was very graphic and a lot less horrible than I imagined it. So I
I felt strong. I felt like that didn't make things worse. Anyway, I could still remember him happy and making jokes and the way that he was. My dad was a man that didn't know how to get close to people. He was very good at showing you his love by doing acts of service. He was very responsible and hardworking, and that is how he showed his love. He wasn't very good with the vulnerable side of things, and so he wasn't very comfortable sharing that he was feeling sick. We knew he was sick. He had a heart attack and he had other health conditions that we knew he wasn't 100% well, but he was also very stubborn, and he was living life in his own terms, and being around people was always difficult for him because we would always worry and would always tell him, take care of yourself, don't do this, don't do that, and he hated that. The last message that I have from my dad said, if you are happy with your choices, then I will be happy too. Because when you win, then it's your win. And when you make a mistake, it's your mistake, and you learn from it. That was the last message I have from my dad. Reinforcing this whole thing that was always his motto, like live life in your own terms. And so in his attempt to spare us from worrying about him and burdening us, because he arranged his own, services. He wanted to be cremated. He didn't want any ceremony. So he wanted to be cremated, and he arranged for all that. He didn't want to be any bother, because he understood that people are so busy and overwhelmed with their own lives that he would be an inconvenience. But by trying not to be an inconvenience, it became pretty inconvenient the way that he passed. All I'm saying is that don't think that you're going to be a burden to others just because you have needs or just because you are in need of help, of assistance, especially if you dedicate your life to doing the right thing, to helping others like my dad did. My dad was very, very much a man of service. And so he deserved, and I would have been very happy to give him time to be with him in his last days. He didn't allow for that. And if you are a person that feels the way, please stop. Give them the chance to be with you. It's good, it's healing for everybody. It's not a burden. Because he was very badly decomposed, because nobody knew for 3 days, and it was a very hot week. So he had to be taken to a place where the bodies that cannot be identified go. And so it was a very hard process to get him out of there. A process that I could only accomplish because I had my brother there with me, and his ex-wife was there, and everybody participated in making this happen, and we did it. We had to spend 2 days trying to get him out of that place so that we could then pass it to the funeral home and have him cremated and get his ashes. It was a matter of principle, because looking at him, I could immediately tell that that was not my dad anymore. That was not my dad. That was just the shell that he left. There was no connection to that body. Maybe because it was too painful to connect with that body in the way that it was, the state that it was in.
Or maybe because it is really me understanding the nature of things. He passed on. He wasn't there. That wasn't him. And so that made it more easy, or easier. That made it easier to deal with. So it was not until I was done with all of that we finally got his ashes, that I could start to feel the pain of his absence. I also know that for a while I felt pretty numb. Luckily, I was speaking to a therapist at that time, and the therapist was just explaining to me how natural it is for us to shut down our emotions when the emotions are too strong, and it's our body, trying to keep us functioning by not letting us feel all that pain, all at once. And so I understood, because slowly I started feeling the pain of his absence. And just last night, and for a while, when I closed my eyes to try to sleep, I could see the body, and it would torture me for a little bit. The first nights it was hard to sleep, but then it started getting better. Now at this point, I feel better about it, but somehow I still get feelings of a void in my stomach when I think about him, because I feel that loneliness that he had when he was alive, and I feel the pain that everybody experienced because of his way of dealing with it, not telling anybody. He made certain arrangements that gave it away that he knew, but he still didn't say anything to his family, and that was his way. And I can tell you that I can make peace with that, because I know that he strongly believed in living in our own terms. And that is why I'm allowed to not suffer, because I know he lived on his terms, and in a way, I have always done the same. And I say in a way because I still get caught up in the people pleasing. We all do, when we don't know how to be of service and how to be individuals. And we all do, right? We all struggle with that at times, because it's kind of hard to discern when to be in devotion to the ones we love. There has to be a balance, and sometimes it's hard to find that balance. And in all these years I've been working on finding that balance. And the reason that this is all relevant is because I know that we all get caught up in our overwhelming emotions, in the overwhelm of our problems. But this sort of gave me a deeper perspective on what matters. Cliches are cliches for a reason. It is when things like this happen that you go, I wish I made more time. I wish I paid more attention. In my case, I wish that I could put aside my own feelings of pain, the pain that I could perceive coming from him, from being so lonely. By his own choice, of course, but nonetheless, he was lonely. And I could perceive that pain that he tried to mask by saying that he was okay, that he gets to wake up at whatever time he wants, and that he gets to do whatever he wants. But in the end, the truth is that he lacked purpose. He lacked motivation and purpose. He didn't have much to live for, and that's why he left us so soon. He was only 65. That's why his body got sick. He was living in his own terms, but not in the healthiest way. It's my point. And because of that, didn't see him as much as I could. And a part of me still feels like I could have put aside my feelings and see him a little bit more. I also shared a video about how my mom did the same thing, but my mom was not as independent as my dad. My dad was very independent, and he literally just would go and disappear, and you would not know that he needed anything. My mom was like the opposite. You definitely knew and were very aware of everything she needed. So with my mom, it was a longer and painful process of seeing her die. With my dad, it was more of a shock, but still, I had to learn to respect their choices, and I had to learn to not take their pain as mine, which is something that is very hard to do for me. And maybe for a lot of people who are identifying with me, it's very hard to do. It's very hard to be with the people that we love when they are in pain, because we cannot help it. We feel their pain, we empathize, and we make it our own. And then because we make it our own, then we kind of just forget to just be present with them. We have a problem taking responsibility for ourselves, but we have no problem taking responsibility for making others feel better. It's confusing, this thing with responsibility. It's a little bit distorted how it works. I hope that in future videos I can make it more clear. For now, this is what I had to share. The reasons that I have been absent, the reasons that I have been overwhelmed, the reasons that I haven't been there for the ones that I care about because I have been overwhelmed, and how I want to change all that. Because this thing that happened with my dad has brought a lot of perspective about what I let get to me and what I shouldn't, because it doesn't serve me. And guilt and all these feelings of coulda, woulda, shoulda are toxic. So here I am, because I have been not answering the call, my call to service, my call to give back. I have been sitting on all these experience that could be helping others the same way that the experiences of others have enriched my life. There is no day that goes by that I don't benefit from somebody putting out their information, an inspirational quote, even, like something that people put out there that has brought me back, that has helped me center myself. There is not a day that goes by that I am not benefiting from people doing that. And so I have been ignoring my call for a long time, and I don't want to do that anymore. It doesn't matter what's happening. Last night was one of those hard nights in which I was feeling the heaviness and the pain of missing my dad. And that's why I decided to come and talk to you guys about it today. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but like I said, I spend too much time thinking about how do I make sense that I get lost, and then I don't do anything. I go into analysis paralysis and don't do anything. Maybe you are also going through the loss of a loved one, and you are letting that consume you and not let you move forward. But I think that there is a way of doing both. Honor their memory while moving forward. And that's what I am intending to do today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next video.